Stop scrolling. This is CJ Webster, founder of C Webster Consulting, where we bring to you actionable insights that help you win more clients, grow customer base, and attract investors. Today, I have the pleasure of having a conversation with John Horn. This is a limited series on competitive intelligence, and you will change the way that you approach the market after hearing this conversation. John is the professor of practice in economics at Olin Business School at Washington University in St. Louis. He is the founder of Gateway Competitive Insights. He is also the author of this particular book that I will show you that I believe should be at the desk of every executive across all industries. If you have responsibility of P&L, sales, marketing, strategy, this book, Inside the Competitor's Mindset, should be right next to you. And you should be reading this book every single day. Today, we have a conversation with the author of this book, John Horn. Let's get into it. Tell me, how did you get into working in competitive intelligence?
Oh, so about 20 years ago when I joined McKinsey, I would join their strategy practice, and they said, figure out something where you can help clients with strategy. And the person whose job I had before me had been doing a lot of game theory workshops, like teaching game theory, describing game theory to clients. And I asked, have you ever actually run the game, done the game, practiced the game with them? And they said no. So I sort of did that because I like playing games and doing those kinds of things. And I sort of became the expert inside the firm. And what game theory really, or what war games really are simulating your moves relative to competitor moves. And the more I started doing the games, the more I started realizing it's not just the exercise, the workshop, it's just a mindset of how you think about your competitors, that it's not about obsessing about your competitors, but understanding what they do, because there are so many examples where companies think they're differentiating themselves against their competitors, but if they're not understanding what their competitors do, they're no different than their competitors. Or they think they understand their competitors and don't really understand them. And so they run into a brick wall because the competitor did something that blocked them. And like I said, it's not about obsessing and focusing only on the competitor and obsessing about what are they doing and why are they doing it and what are they going to do next, and et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, you have to focus on your own plans, but I would challenge anyone to think of an example where you are not competing in the market with someone else. Even if it's a partnership, you're competing with that partner to split the profits that you generate together. If it's with a supplier, you're competing with that supplier to think about how are we going to split the value that we co-generate when we have that supplier relationship. There's always someone else in the market. You are never going to produce a product and sell directly to a customer yourself without interacting with anyone else. And that customer is never going to say, oh, I don't care about anyone else, I'm just going to buy from you. There's no one else I'm even thinking about buying from. There's always someone else. And if you don't think about those other people, if you don't think about why they do what they do and what they're going to do, it's, we can use the analogies of sports, or we can use the analogies of lots of other like our personal lives, right? You can just put your head down and plow through life and say, I'm going to go to the movie, or I'm going to go to get dinner, or I'm going to do this. But if you really want to have a good relationship with other people, you've got to at least understand a little bit about what they want and a little bit of how they're going to play the game if you're playing a sports game against them. So that's really what it's about. Is I realize that most executives ignore their competitors, and it's really important to be able to think about why they do what they do, not so I can focus on what they do, but so I can understand what's the best choice for me to do.
I like that. Best choice for you to do. So, I talk to many senior executives in legal tech, and legal tech is a large, industry. It's a very niche industry. And so these are, C-level executives who are, running analytics and data technology type companies. So you see a lot of talk about AI, and every day it feels like there are new either, entrants coming into the market that are launching AI solutions, or you see that, some of the, longer standing companies are launching AI products. Why should these executives and people within these companies track their rivals and try to decode strategies that are happening?
I guess the simplest way I would frame it is if you could go back to last November of 2022, before ChatGPT 3 really, exploded on the scene. And if you could go back then, knowing what you know now in November of 2023 about what your competitors have done with AI, how they've made investments in AI, what companies they've acquired to try to build up their AI capabilities. If you went back in time a year ago and knew everything you knew today, would you make the same decisions that you made? And most people would say, well, yeah, mostly, but well, nah, it'd been nice to know if I'd known that, or I might have done this a little bit differently, or maybe I would have bought that company first, or I'd have realized that that's not the best move. Competitive intelligence and insight isn't about perfectly predicting what's going to happen, but at least paying attention to it, thinking about what might happen, thinking about what those competitors, are they going to acquire someone? Or what kind of AI are they going to develop in the next year? Where are they going to focus in terms of their AI development technologies? Are they going to build AI for internal use within a law firm, or are they going to build an AI for use within their own platform, which will then be accessible by any law firm? Two totally different decisions. And you may say, well, I don't care. Well, but what if the law firm says, yeah, we don't want to own our own AI because we don't want to just, train on our own stuff. We want to train on all the stuff you have so we can access off your platform. It's about understanding the customer, but it's also understanding what others are doing. Because if the customer comes to you and says, hey, we want to have our own LLM AI, generative AI intern of the law firm, you say, great, we can do that. And then they go and talk to your competitor, and the competitor says, actually, that's not a good idea, and here's why. The law firm's going to say, oh, yeah, that doesn't make sense. So they're never going to come back to you because they moved on to a better idea. And if you're not even paying attention to that stuff, you can put your head down and just plow forward. But I sort of think it's more helpful to at least think about what other people doing, what other people telling customers, and where are they investing in their research and developing new things, and who are they partnering with, who's developed AI, AI technologies, et cetera. That's really what it's about. It's not perfectly predicting, but if if you really say, yeah, I would never make any decision differently if I could go back in time and make it before, then you are like the one person in the history of business who's never made a mistake. And most executives at some point make a mistake. So that's not to say you should never make a mistake, but the idea is, why not try to look forward a little bit? And looking forward isn't just about you. It's about everyone else in the environment that you interact with.
You bring up an amazing point about looking back. I think about what you said, making those decisions. And I think about a situation where, a company announced $100 million investment in AI, and then they followed it up by purchasing a company where they did build, it was a build partner, type model, or build partner buy model is what they said. They pay $650 million in cash for that company, for the AI tech, right? I wonder if their rivals or competitors, had they known that was going to happen, right, would they make different decisions in their go-to-market for their AI, right? So it goes back to what you're saying. I'm not sure, but it makes you wonder. So where does competitive intelligence fit within the entire strategic planning process? Do you see it as like a major key piece of it, or is it just one of many pieces?
I think it depends on the decision. I think it depends on the choice you're trying to make. I think competitive insight matters when you're making choices that are going to turn out to be successful or not, depending on how other people make choices. If you're making a choice strategically, should we invest in this company or that company? And it's essentially, they both make the same artificial intelligence, and we're deciding, do we close the deal this quarter or next quarter? And what's that going to do to you don't need to like competitive strategize that. But to your point, if you're thinking about, should we develop ourselves or should we acquire someone else who's already developed it? Well, let me think about, like, down the road, what are my competitors doing? They're not making any investments in developing their own tech. Well, that means it's probably a good chance down the road that they're going to want to acquire tech themselves, which means we're going to get into a bidding war with someone else to try to acquire the tech, because there probably aren't going to be like dozens of the best technology out there, there's going to be like one or two that everyone wants to get, which means we're going to get into a bidding war, which means do we want that? Maybe. Okay. Maybe because we don't think we can develop it ourselves, but at least you've thought through that and thought through the implications, as opposed to 6 months from now, you're like, oh my gosh, we need to go get tech. And oh no, it's a bidding war. And, oh, this is awful and blah. Like, at least you're aware of it. So I think it's more of a mindset. I think good strategists are always sort of thinking about the future, and anytime something changes, they update their thoughts about, oh, the industry is now moving in this direction, or, oh, there's this risk with the regulators in that direction, or, oh, there's this thing in this customer trend in that direction. You're constantly doing that with everything else. Just add understanding competitors as part of that process, so that when you have to make the decision, that's part of the set of information you have to make your choice.
Interesting. So would you say that best practice from your experience, should you update and refresh your competitive, competitors and rival decks that you have, quarterly, or, twice a year, or just annually? What would you say is best practice?
Again, it depends on how you make strategic decisions. If you're sort of an annual strategic planning process, then before you get into that strategic planning process every year, update to see what's going on. It's probably more helpful if you sort of set aside every quarter to just do a little bit of a refresh update, so that you're not like saying, okay, let's take 2 weeks out to try to update all these decks frantically, while we're also trying to figure out, all the other stuff we have to do for strategic planning. I mean, there are a lot of tools that we have technologically right now which can help us with that, like, alerts from search engines, or, even set up little AI bots that sort of tell you, hey, guess what? We saw there's this, they put out a press release about this information. Because it's not really about, again, it's not about perfectly predicting what they're going to do, but it's about making yourself aware and cognizant of the fact that they're doing these things, so that when you get to that choice, oh, that's right, I remember a couple months ago they just acquired that new firm. Let me go look that up real quick. Oh yeah, that's right, they paid $650 million for that. Whoa, okay, so they're all in on that one. We know what they're going to do in the next 2 years. They're going to keep building that out because they paid all that money for it. So it's more about making yourself constantly aware and keeping track of those notes. I think it is it's one area where you could create your own artificial intelligence to keep track of it, so it's available and ready and handy when you need it. Mm-hmm. But if every day, do you need to do it? No. Is it every quarter? It wouldn't help, just so that you're not feeling bogged down. I think the thing about competitive insight and gathering the information and collecting and collating it so it's ready is it shouldn't feel like a burden. So if you're talking about getting information from your sales force, it shouldn't be like, hey, we're nearing the strategic planning process. I want you to think back of the last 10 months and think about every competitor you've ever talked about with a customer. What were the things that the customers were telling you the competitors were focusing on, et cetera? And Salesforce would be like, I'm just going to ignore it. And hopefully, in a week and two, they're going to forget it because they're past the process. So I don't have to do it. Instead, think about, like, if you have Salesforce or some other CRM system, just add a question to the form they fill out every time they talk to a customer. Did you talk about a competitor today with that customer? Yes. Which one? All right, thanks. That's it. You may think, well, how does that tell me something? The system in the background could say, hey, guess what? We're hearing about this competitor over and over and over and over, because every sales agent comes back and says they're talking to their customers. The customers are bringing up this particular competitor over and over and over. Hey, guess what? We should pay attention to this competitor because they're clearly making inroads with customers. It's about those patterns and those traits. And then you know what to go focus on, as opposed to let's obsessively learn everything about that potential competitor. You may not need 90% of it. So don't waste your time with it.
Makes sense to me. Talking about the patterns and traits that you see over time. When you think about, competitive intelligence and turning into actual insights and keeping on that track with sales, right? Mm-hmm. Oftentimes I find that sales has the biggest thirst or largest thirst for competitive intelligence, because they often are at times going heads to head against their rival and other competitors. But then also they're the ones that, may not be plugging in the information into Salesforce.com or the CRM. Right. And so as they're banging on the door to their sales VP or their manager, and they're asking, I need that silver bullet. And it's oftentimes it's a challenge. So I like what you're saying, that, even if you're doing it quarterly, that makes sense. But how can, sales leaders, take on proactive roles, or who based on your experience, who should they be working with within their organization to make sure that that fresh data is available, so that at a certain point they spot those trends to say, hey, we are noticing that with our churn, that this competitor continues to come up, and it's not just a click in the CRM to say it was, company XYZ, but understanding why is company XYZ.
Yeah.
Great conversation so far, right? It is. Guess what? There's more. John, in the second segment, is going to talk about tools that you can leverage within your current business to unearth nuggets of information that will become competitive intelligence that you can turn into actionable insights. He also is going to go into executive profiling. And then lastly, we're going to take a current event and break it down and show you how competitive insights work in real time with this current event. I'm CJ Webster with C Webster Consulting, and I'm bringing you more conversation that will help you win business, grow customer base, and attract investors. Until next time, peace.